Welcome to today's deep dive. We are so thrilled to have you here with us.
Absolutely, it's great to be here.
So let's start with a paradox that you have almost certainly noticed in your everyday life.
Right.
We all know the planet is in peril. We hear politicians, philosophers, pundits talking about it constantly on the news.
It's everywhere.
It really is.
Yeah.
We are practically drowning in proposals to reverse the destruction.
Yeah.
So why aren't we actually doing anything to save it?
Yeah.
Why does it feel like humanity as a whole is just stuck in neutral, paralyzed, while the clock ticks down?
It is arguably the defining paradox of our time. And the answer, surprisingly, might not be found in atmospheric climate science at all.
Which is where we usually look.
Exactly. It's not in the sky. It's rather in the hidden, deeply ingrained wiring of our own minds. Global warming isn't just an environmental problem.
Right.
It is a profound psychological and cultural one. The reality is, stopping it requires a massive, coordinated shift in individual behavior, which means we have to examine the underlying cultural forces that are driving our most mundane, everyday actions.
Everyday actions, because every daily choice you make, from switching on a hallway light to grabbing something off a supermarket shelf to buying a new pair of shoes, it all impacts the environment.
It adds up.
It does. So today, we are going on a mission to unpack the hidden psychological barriers to climate action. We are looking specifically at how our unconscious minds dictate our consumer choices.
And how they often completely override our best intentions.
Yes. To do this, we are drawing on two incredibly insightful sources. We've got a tailored report titled Bridging the Psychological Divide, and some really revealing research from psychologist Geoffrey Beattie's book, Why Aren't We Saving the Planet?
And what we're going to explore today is how human activity, particularly the mundane, everyday consumption that is allegedly killing the planet, has rarely been examined as a product of our own internal, unconscious, signifying roots. We're going to look at the massive discrepancy between what we consciously believe we are doing and what our automatic split-second reflexes are actually driving us to do.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we want to figure out why people aren't acting, we first have to look at how psychologists have historically tried to measure what people even think in the first place.
Right, the methodology.
Yeah. For a long time, the sources point out that researchers relied almost entirely on the explicit mind.
Yes.
They would essentially just hand people a survey and ask them how they felt about the environment.
Which, that approach was heavily influenced by the mid-century psychologist Gordon Allport. He focused on attitudes as conscious, deliberate states of mind.
Conscious states.
Right. So if you wanted to know if someone was pro-environment, you just ask them to reflect on their values and report back using one of those standard 1 to 5 scales.
Like strongly agree, strongly disagree.
Exactly. But there's a massive flaw in this methodology, known in psychology as social desirability.
Oh, social desirability.
Right. As human beings, we are heavily hardwired to want to look good to our peers.
Of course we are.
We want to appear considerate, knowledgeable, and especially today, we want to look green.
So true.
So when someone asks us point blank on a survey, we filter our answer through that desire. We say what we think we should say to be viewed favorably.
We all want the gold star for being a good person.
Precisely.
But our sources mention that in the 1990s, a researcher named Anthony Greenwald kind of threw a wrench into this whole reliance on conscious reflection.
He did. He pointed out the attitude-behavior problem.
Which is just a fancy way of saying that what people claim they believe rarely matches how they actually behave.
Right. And to get around this filter, he introduced something called the implicit association test.
The IAT.
The IAT, yeah.
So how does a test actually bypass the conscious mind? I mean, you're still taking a test, right?
You are, but it bypasses it through sheer speed. The IAT measures response times to visual and verbal cues in milliseconds.
A millisecond.
Literally milliseconds. In the context of the environment, participants sit at a computer and are asked to rapidly categorize items as having either good or bad environmental characteristics.
Oh, okay.
And because you are forced to react so incredibly fast, you physically don't have time to process your answer through that filter of social desirability.
You literally can't fake it fast enough.
You can't. To use an analogy, it's like measuring a physical reflex. If you touch a hot stove, you pull your hand away long before your conscious brain processes the thought.
This is hot. I should move my hand.
Right. The IAT measures the psychological equivalent of that instant unconscious reflex.
That makes total sense. You just strip away the time needed to formulate a socially acceptable lie.
Exactly.
So what actually happens when researchers put people's environmental attitudes to this rapid-fire test? Do we all secretly hate the planet?
Well, the initial data is actually quite encouraging.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Explicitly, when you just ask people on a survey, they are generally very pro-environment. But implicitly, when you test those unconscious reflexes, it turns out people's automatic associations also highly favor low-carbon products.
Okay, so the reflexes match the surveys.
In the aggregate, yes. For instance, participants incredibly quickly categorize things like pineapples flown in from far away as bad and local English apples or locally grown blackberries as good.
Makes sense.
They instinctively reacted to wind power as positive and gas-guzzling cars as negative.
Wait, if both our conscious surveys and our unconscious reflexes are pointing toward the green option, where is the problem?
Right.
Why aren't we buying the local apples over the imported pineapple?
Because when researchers drill down into the data of individual people, they find that these two minds are frequently dissociated.
Dissociated, meaning what exactly?
It's a psychological term, meaning there's absolutely no correlation between what a specific person consciously says they believe and what their unconscious mind automatically associates with good or bad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'd ask you to reflect on your own habits for a second. Think about the values you consciously preach to your friends or family at a dinner party.
Sure.
Do they actually match the split-second decisions you make when you're stressed and rushing through your day?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because that dissociation between the two minds creates a very specific and somewhat alarming subset of the population. The data highlights a group that the research initially called green fakers.
Yes, a fascinating demographic. Between 13% and 20% of the population fall into this category.
But hold on, are they actually faking it? That implies a level of malicious intent or, intentional hypocrisy.
It does sound like that.
Are these people actively lying on surveys while secretly hating the environment? Or do they just not realize they have this massive blind spot?
It is almost entirely a blind spot. They genuinely believe their own explicit claims.
They aren't trying to deceive anyone?
No, they will give themselves top scores for being green. They advocate for sustainable policies, but deep down, their automatic unconscious associations simply don't align with those stated values.
Wow.
The unconscious mind hasn't caught up to the conscious identity they've built for themselves.
And what I love about the source material is how brutally honest the author is about this exact blind spot.
Yes, Geoffrey Beattie.
Right. Psychologist Geoffrey Beattie, the very guy who authored the book we are referencing and who conducted this research, decided he needed to put himself through the implicit association test.
And his assumption heading into the test was completely confident.
Completely. He had been meticulously saving his grocery receipts for weeks, assuming his purchases would serve as ironclad proof of his conscious environmental concerns.
He thought he was the model green consumer.
Exactly. But then he sits down at the computer, takes his own rapid-fire test, and the results pop up. He was absolutely shocked to discover that he was a green faker.
His own data betrayed him.
It did. His own unconscious mind favored high-carbon, convenient options, completely contradicting his stated beliefs and academic focus.
It perfectly highlights how pervasive and invisible this dissociation can be. You might not even know your own unconscious mind is sabotaging you until it's tested.
That is wild.
And the sources detail a fascinating way these individuals can literally be spotted in the wild without ever needing a computer program.
Really? How?
It comes down to something researchers call a gesture-speech mismatch.
Gestures betraying the words.
Uh-huh.
How does that actually present itself when you are just talking to someone?
Well, we have to recognize that human communication isn't just about the audio track, the words coming out of our mouths.
Right, there's body language.
It's a complex multi-channel activity.
Yeah.
As we speak, we generate what psychologists call expressive movements, particularly with our hands and arms.
Sure.
These gestures are often iconic, meaning they physically represent the concept we are talking about, and they are generated entirely unconsciously. The research found that when green fakers are put in a position where they are explicitly espousing green attitudes that conflict with their hidden implicit beliefs,
Yeah.
a literal physical clash occurs in their body language.
What does that clash actually look like? Are they pointing at the wrong things while talking?
Essentially, yes.
Huh.
Someone might be verbally saying, I always try to buy low-carbon products because it's the right thing to do, but their unconscious hand movements might be literally mimicking or pointing toward the high-carbon alternatives they secretly prefer.
No way.
Or the gestures become odd, hesitant, and incomplete. They might physically wave away the very concept they're verbally supporting.
That's incredible.
Their conscious spoken words are trying to paint a green picture, but their unconscious physical gestures are broadcasting the real, less flattering story.
It's like a modern environmental equivalent of a Freudian slip. Your body is ratting out your brain.
It proves that we simply cannot rely on focus groups or self-reported surveys if we want to fundamentally change consumer behavior.
Because they're just telling us what we want to hear.
The conscious mind is too busy managing its public relations to give us the truth.
So if our brains are betraying us with these microgestures during a simple conversation, what happens when we're actually forced to make a choice?
In the real world.
Yeah, say when we're standing in the middle of a grocery store. I want you to imagine your typical supermarket run. It's Tuesday evening, you're exhausted from work, you have a cart with a wobbly wheel, and you just want to get dinner sorted.
The classic scenario.
You are walking down the aisles, passing roughly 300 different brands per minute.
Which is a staggering number.
It really is. The amount of visual information bombarding your brain is staggering.
This is the ultimate testing ground for those unconscious attitudes. The entire philosophy behind carbon footprint labels relies on the idea that climate change is driven by consumer excess. So the logical solution is to empower the consumer with more information. The assumption is that if you just slap the carbon data on the packaging, shoppers will pause, read it, and make informed, rational adjustments to what they put in their cart.
But in that rapid-fire, 300 brand a minute environment, the rational mind doesn't have time to take the wheel, does it?
Not at all. The eye-tracking research cited in our sources completely shatters this assumption.
Eye-tracking research.
Yes. In tests tracking exactly where consumers look when viewing supermarket products, researchers found that the carbon label was the focus of a consumer's first visual fixation in only 7% of cases.
7%. That is incredibly low.
It's negligible.
If they're completely ignoring the carbon label 93% of the time, what are their eyes actually darting toward in that critical first moment?
They prioritize entirely different immediate markers. Their eyes dart to the price tag, to appealing or familiar product images, and to markers of freshness.
Like what?
Like a brightly colored sticker claiming a product was picked within 24 hours.
Oh, sure. And when you actually look at the current carbon labels, it's no wonder people ignore them.
They're a mess.
They are. They are a mess of tiny text, numbers, and scientific abbreviations. You have little icons paired with text saying things like 12 kilograms CO2 per 1,000 hours of use.
It's too much.
Who has the cognitive bandwidth to do that kind of math while trying to figure out which laundry soap is on sale?
Exactly. It creates an enormous cognitive overload. And the sources show there are major discrepancies depending on the product, too.
How so?
People might actually glance at the carbon footprint on items they already explicitly associate with being green, like low-energy light bulbs.
Because they're primed for it.
Right. But when it comes to everyday, mundane items like liquid detergent or orange juice, the eye tracking shows minimal to absolutely zero visual attention on the carbon footprint.
Zero.
Zero. The current labels are fundamentally misconceived because they are designed for the slow, analytical, conscious mind. But supermarket shopping is driven almost entirely by the fast, automatic, implicit mind.
If a label isn't processed within that critical 5-second decision window, it might as well be invisible.
Exactly.
So how do the researchers suggest we fix this? How do we bypass the math and speak directly to that fast-moving unconscious autopilot?
The psychological solution proposed is to drop the complex science entirely and utilize color coding.
Color coding.
Yes. The experiments demonstrated that when carbon footprints are displayed using stark colors, specifically red and orange, to denote high carbon emissions, they are noticed significantly more quickly and looked at for longer durations than numerical data.
Because color doesn't require translation, it's a primal signal.
Precisely. Red elicits an immediate psychological avoidance response. It's an iconic representation that summarizes a complex threat instantly.
Right.
If a consumer is rushing on autopilot, a bright red label on a high-carbon brand can trigger an unconscious nudge to pull their hand back.
Without doing the math.
without them ever needing to consciously calculate what 12 kilograms of CO2 actually means in the atmosphere.
Okay, so a red label might interrupt a split-second supermarket decision, but how do we go deeper than just a quick visual nudge?
Right.
How do we actually change those deeply rooted unconscious attitudes in the first place? To answer that, the sources pivot to look at the role of media, specifically examining the impact of Al Gore's famous documentary, An Inconvenient Truth.
The research wanted to see if highly informative emotional media could create what psychologists term a psychological shock.
A psychological shock.
They wanted to know if a film could be profound enough to alter both our immediate mood and our social cognitions.
What are social cognitions?
Which is a term for how we process, store, and apply information about other people and our own role within society.
Got it. And what fascinated me about the data on this was that the impact was actually overwhelmingly positive.
It was.
Watching clips from the film significantly increased the viewer's motivation to act. It made them feel more empowered and actually decreased their sense of fatalism.
That heavy, paralyzing feeling.
Yeah, the feeling that the problem is too big and there's nothing one person can do.
The researchers measured the emotional weight of different segments of the documentary. Unsurprisingly, the most profound impacts on a viewer's mood were caused by the most concrete, devastating imagery.
Like the floods.
Right. The clip depicting rising sea levels and the massive displacement of millions of people caused the highest spike in sadness and the lowest levels of happiness among the participants.
But there was a really counterintuitive detail about that specific rising sea levels clip.
Oh, definitely.
Yes, it made people incredibly sad, but the participants' tiredness ratings dropped dramatically compared to their baseline before watching.
It literally jolted them awake.
It seems to prove that you need that visceral emotional hook to cut through the daily apathy.
This raises an important question, though, about the unintended consequences of how we frame these emotional messages. The sources are very clear on the psychological data regarding certain types of global messaging. For instance, the film includes a segment often referred to as the China clip, which focuses heavily on the rapid economic expansion and subsequent massive emissions of developing nations.
Okay, so showing the global scale of the problem. What happens when people watch that?
When participants watched this specific geopolitical clip, the research measured a significant increase in a psychological defense mechanism called shifting responsibility.
Shifting responsibility.
Instead of feeling motivated to reduce their own local footprint, viewers suddenly felt that it was the responsibility of other countries or even future generations to act.
Oh, wow.
I want to be clear that we are simply reporting the psychological data here. This isn't a commentary on international climate policy.
Right.
But the objective psychological finding is that highlighting the massive emissions of geopolitical others can severely backfire. It reduces personal motivation and triggers a blame game, turning what should be global cooperation into a competition of finger-pointing.
It makes total psychological sense when you think about it in everyday terms. It's the same reason someone might look at a billionaire flying across the state in a private jet and think, why should I bother painstakingly washing and recycling my tiny plastic yogurt container when that guy is emitting tons of carbon for a 15-minute flight?
Exactly.
If you point the finger at a massive external target, the viewer's unconscious mind says, great, I'm off the hook. This is out of my hands.
The language and framing we use matter immensely.
They really do. In fact, the sources point out another huge danger lurking in our everyday language. The very term global warming itself.
The terminology is incredibly problematic because human beings generally rely on something called the availability heuristic.
The availability heuristic.
This is a mental shortcut where we judge the severity of a risk based on how easy it is to imagine or recall examples of it.
So if we hear about a plane crash on the news, we suddenly think flying is incredibly dangerous because the image is readily available in our minds, even though driving is statistically much riskier.
Exactly. And the problem with global warming as a metaphor is that the word warming sounds inherently pleasant to the human brain.
It does.
You warm your soup, you warm your hands by a fire, you warm your slippers. It sounds cozy, homely, and safe.
Like a blanket.
It suggests a slow, gradual, comfortable process that we can easily adapt to. This deeply dulls our unconscious perception of the actual catastrophic risk involved.
Global warming doesn't sound like a crisis. It sounds like a comfortable evening indoors.
Precisely.
So to pull all of this together, if we want to actually change behavior and save the planet, we clearly can't rely purely on what people claim on a survey.
No, we can't.
And we definitely can't rely on complex, text-heavy carbon labels that require a math degree to decode while standing in the detergent aisle.
We have to design our solutions to communicate directly with the fast, automatic, unconscious mind.
The autopilot.
That means utilizing highly visible, color-coded labels that trigger instinctual avoidance, and leveraging emotionally resonant media that creates vivid, enduring flashbulb memories to make the risks feel personal, immediate, and highly consequential.
So what does this all mean for you? Next time you are doing your weekly shopping, try to step outside yourself for a second. Challenge yourself to notice your own autopilot.
It's a good challenge.
Are your hands automatically reaching for the same familiar high-carbon products while your conscious brain tells you you're a committed environmentalist? Catching that gesture-speech mismatch in your own life, recognizing your own inner green faker, is the very first step to bridging the divide.
And I will leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over, drawn from the author's own psychological practice.
What's that?
He mentions treating a self-confessed shopaholic who bought hundreds of items of clothing, but she didn't buy them for the clothes themselves.
Why did she buy them?
She bought them for the approving looks and social validation she received from her family when she wore something new. Consumption is deeply, inextricably tied to our self-identity, our social standing, and our fragile egos.
Wow.
If our buying habits are so profoundly linked to how we define ourselves that even our unconscious physical gestures betray our conscious attempts to be green,
Yeah.
could the ultimate barrier to climate action simply be that we are terrified of losing who we are without our stuff?
That is definitely something to think about next time you hit the checkout line. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.